a divided land with a troubled history, now at the heart of a quarrelsome relationship extending way beyond its shores. Tensions between the UK and the EU are being aggravated by the Northern Ireland Protocol, the most challenging part of the Brexit settlement. Questions:
does the Secretary of State think that people in Northern Ireland are stupid?
After the government announced unilateral action to soften the impact of the protocol. To avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland, the UK agreed that Northern Ireland would remain largely within the orbit of the EU. That meant a range of checks on goods travelling from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. The full implementation of those checks has been delayed unilaterally by the UK for 6 months. And this week, a leading Brexiteer in the Cabinet said new checks should only apply in limited circumstances.
Well, the government always intended that it would be a light touch protocol to try and stop goods at risk getting into the Republic of Ireland and hence into the European Union single market. We never intended it as a means of stopping goods getting to Northern Ireland.
Sorry, can I take this one?
Jacob Rees-Mogg also questioned a landmark statement by the UK in 1993 that it had no selfish strategic or economic interest in Northern Ireland. Those words helped persuade the IRA in secret contacts eventually to end its terror campaign.
Somebody once said that the UK had no selfish interest in Northern Ireland. I dispute that. I think we have an interest in keeping our whole country together as a united kingdom.
Today, Labour was granted an urgent Commons debate.
The government said there would never be a border in the Irish Sea. Then they signed up to one. Then they pretended it didn't exist, but said that even if it did, sure, it will have no impact anyway. And now they're saying, well, actually, there is one, but we can just ignore it. Will the right honourable gentleman stop taking people for fools and start showing the responsible leadership required to sort this out?
Well, I assume that if he would therefore support the moves we took last week and show leadership to deliver for the people of Northern Ireland, I would say to him we've been consistent that we wanted to deliver, and we have delivered unfettered access for Northern Ireland businesses to the rest of the UK market.
Northern Ireland was always going to be the most difficult aspect of any Brexit settlement. In a sense, it helped bring down Theresa May after she tried to avoid checks on the Irish Sea by forging a closer relationship for the whole of the UK with the EU. Boris Johnson opted for a more distant relationship for Great Britain from the EU, thereby creating the need for some checks down the Irish Sea. He now believes the EU is opting for an overly strict approach and failing to understand the sensitivities of Northern Ireland.
I think the government's in the right place. Essentially, when we made the agreement to leave the EU, there was always going to be a process that was all going to be sorted out in detail. Now, that process requires reasonableness on both sides. And my sense is that we are being reasonable, and frankly, the EU's not.
The leader of the nationalist SDLP is highly critical.
It's very damaging for the British government across the world, not just in America, but across Europe as well. I don't think it's a great way to start out their newfound supposed freedom on the world stage. And of course, Boris Johnson will want to move away from the Brexit issue and get on to talking about climate change and other things. This doesn't bode well if they're prepared to do this and treat other people like that. But I'm absolutely confident that the DUP and others will be, again, sold down the river, and they shouldn't depend on Boris Johnson. If they haven't learned that by now, then they're very, very bad at this game.
A monumental moment once again for Northern Ireland as it finds itself shaping wider European history.
Nick Watt with that report. Well, joining us now is Sammy Wilson, the DUP's Chief Whip in Westminster, Neal Richmond, the spokesperson on European affairs for Ireland's governing party, Fine Gael, and the Democratic Congressman Richard Neal, who's chairman of both the Friends of Ireland caucus, who met with Simon Coveney and Mara Šefčovič today, and of the influential Ways and Means Committee in the US House of Representatives. And Congressman Neal, if I can start with you, just tell us how you perceive this. Is this a breach of the Northern Ireland Protocol, or is it a pragmatic and reasonable response? How does Washington see it?
I think it was the unilateral manner in which it was adopted that has bothered many of us. When you used a quote early on, that quote actually came from John Major. I knew John Major, and I remember when he stated it. It went a long way toward pacifying both traditions in the north of Ireland, but it also reassured people, based upon the genius of the Good Friday Agreement, that those who wish to be Irish could be Irish, and those who wish to be British could be British. It was indeed, as I've noted, the work of genius. And I think that the problems through the divorce that the UK has had with the European Union, they continue to be pretty stubborn. But Ireland ought not to be caught as a wedge issue here, nor should they be used as hostage in the difficulties and challenges that a post-Brexit Europe will look like.
I guess the UK government would argue this is just light touch protocol trying to solve problems. Do you actually think it's undermining the Good Friday Agreement, this action?
Fair enough, your description, but here's my suggestion. This could have been resolved through negotiations. In talking with the European Union Commissioner and talking with Simon Coveney, they both agreed this could be done through negotiations. There was no need to use the protocol in an effort to jeopardize the sensitivities that surround one of the most stubborn problems in the history of the Western world, the border in the north of Ireland.
The Irish government have called the UK a partner that can no longer be relied on, no longer be trusted, and the UK is accused of breaking international law twice in 6 months. Does the government share the same concerns? Are you looking at the UK in a different light?
That's not for me to suggest. I think that my position here has been, as George Mitchell's was in the past, suggesting that the Good Friday Agreement is one of the great achievements, again, in modern Western history, and understanding this, that America is a guarantor of that agreement. So fully expect us to take a vested interest and a long-term interest in the success of the Good Friday Accord. And I think this is a time for cooler heads to prevail, negotiations to get together, and try to find a way forward short of unilateral actions that seem to threaten the goodwill that has been established by the Good Friday Agreement. The people that negotiated the Good Friday Agreement, they need to be cheered on. They took enormous political risks in both the traditions in the North. And we should honor that based upon the agreement they came to. That's the sanctity of the Good Friday Agreement.
Does this affect anything else that you're looking at? I mean, you'll know better than I do that we're looking for a free trade deal with America right now. Does this row impact that at all?
I'm going to be talking with the Secretary, I hope, in the next couple of days, and I think we're going to have a discussion that will privately address some of those issues. But I want to see these negotiations just get back on an even keel. We all have a keen interest in making sure the Good Friday Agreement is honored.
And we hear that, or there are early reports in one of the papers tomorrow that Brandon Lewis, the Northern Ireland Secretary, is looking to establish ties in Washington, something that would help with those negotiations. Can you shed any light on that?
Well, he knows that I'm only too happy to be helpful. I've been helpful in the past. I've tried very hard to be an honest broker in these discussions. I think that we all should be celebrating what happened with the Good Friday Agreement. This is a never will happen moment. We all had a chance to participate in it and witness it. So I've been through, I don't know how many prime ministers, how many secretaries of state, and how many Irish prime ministers along the way, but we've been steadfast in our determination here in America to be an honest broker and a guarantor of one of the most successful dimensions to American foreign policy, the Good Friday Agreement.
Thank you very much, Congressman. I'm going to bring in Sammy Wilson now. Do you appreciate that position of needing an honest broker right now? Because it's a pretty sorry state of affairs when the EU is threatening legal action and the US is worrying about the future of the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, you're going to have an honest broker. They've got to understand what the problem is. And I must say, I was struck by the total lack of understanding of the Good Friday Agreement and the implications for the Good Friday Agreement from the protocol, because of course the protocol, as David Trimble, who negotiated the Good Friday Agreement on behalf of unionists, has said, is rips up the Good Friday Agreement because, first of all, it removes the principle of consent, i.e. that the constitutional position of Northern Ireland cannot be changed without the consent of the people of Northern Ireland, and secondly, that issues such as those being dealt with the protocol must have community consent, cross-community consent. And the cross-community consent element of the Good Friday Agreement was actually removed for the specific purpose of ensuring that the protocol was not challenged here in Northern Ireland. Of course, it wouldn't have of unionists.
Sammy, it's a bit rich, isn't it? You held the balance of power in Westminster in the UK for 2 years, and you constantly voted against the one solution on the table that kept Northern Ireland in GB's orbit. So to turn round and say, you know, you don't like the next thing when it's your arguably political incompetence that got you here is extraordinary.
Well, that's not right. Of course, we voted against Mrs May's deal because it did not, first of all, deliver Brexit. It would have kept the United Kingdom in the single market and in the customs union of the EU, which of course meant that we wouldn't have the economic and political independence that Brexit promised to deliver. And secondly, of course, Mrs May's deal actually was a far worse deal for Northern Ireland because it would have left Northern Ireland fully within.
But it doesn't solve the problem, which is, where is that border? Clearly, you don't want that border in the Irish Sea, and I presume you don't want that border between the north and south. Where do you do the checks? How do you solve the problem?
Well, first of all, the first thing you don't do is check goods which come from GB into Northern Ireland and don't go any further. And don't forget, we now have the most policed border in the whole of the EU between GB and Northern Ireland. 20% in January and February, 20% of the point of entry certificates, which are required by the EU for goods coming from what they call third countries, and that's the offensive that their own.
Let me bring in Neal Richmond on this.
Are now made on the Northern Ireland border. So we're the most policed part of the EU border for goods which don't go into the EU, which stay in Northern Ireland.
Neal Richmond, do you want to respond to that?
Well, there's quite a lot to respond to. Let's remember that Sammy voted against this deal. He voted against Mrs May's deal, and his party was consistently against the Good Friday Agreement. The root of the problem here isn't the protocol. That's the solution. The problem is Brexit. And many opportunities were presented to solve this. And eventually, after 5 torturous years, we came up with a solution. Is it ideal? No. Is it the best of both worlds? No. The best of both worlds was, of course, the UK remaining in the EU. That wasn't an option. And now when Sammy talks about being the most policed border in the EU, the UK isn't in the EU. And we're in the middle of a pandemic where European countries have shut their borders. So he's using selective facts unnecessarily. We have a situation here, Emily, where the UK has acted in a unilateral manner. Unilateral action is never a solution. It is an untrustworthy action. Well, we have said consistently that we want to be the UK's best friends within the EU. We're working towards that aim, but they're certainly making it very difficult for us.
Is the answer really to go straight to legal action? I mean, that's not diplomacy, it's a sign of failure.
Well, this is the arbitrary mechanism that the protocol and indeed arrangements allowed for. It's the legal approach. It's not the unilateral approach. It's not the approach of the British government where they've sought to break international law, as you mentioned twice, but international law that this government voted on, this government negotiated, and it was all done within the last couple of months. It's an absolutely farcical situation, and we in the Irish government have consistently worked with our European partners to deliver that level of flexibility and grace that many in Northern Ireland seek for. But unfortunately, Sammy and his colleagues have been dead set against this from the outset. They're trying to wreck it, and all they're doing is using inflammatory language like guerrilla warfare to make a situation worse. We can resolve this. We do need cool heads, but we also need the British government to actually meet their legal responsibilities.
Sammy Wilson, can you respond to that? A lot of our viewers will remember that Northern Ireland voted to remain by 56%. Now, you don't want to go back over the last 5 years. We can't, change where we are now. But it doesn't sound like a solution where we've got to.
First of all, we are part of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom voted to leave the EU, and we are part of the United Kingdom and therefore entitled to leave along with the rest of the United Kingdom. But secondly, and let me just take Neal up on some of the points he has made. The Irish government have not been our friends or even attempted to be our friends in this. The Irish government know that trade between the biggest, our biggest economic partner has been severely disrupted, that the warnings are that once the grace period was over, that disruption would be magnified 10 times and that we would have huge problems. And indeed, that's the view of the people on the ground who have to do the inspections. And thirdly, that the protocol made it quite clear that where there was economic or societal damage to Northern Ireland from the protocol, that the UK government had the right to act unilaterally. And that's what they've done. And indeed, I've been very surprised if the UK government had not acted to protect this part of the United Kingdom, the economy of this part of the United Kingdom, and the citizens of this part of the United Kingdom, as well as the integrity of our own country. And I can tell you one thing, that had the same damage been done to the Irish Republic, then the Irish Republic would have been demanding that action be taken.
Okay.
And
let me just ask, let me go back to Richard Neal, with your honest broker hat on, if we can. Where do you see the solution to this particular problem?
I think there's considerable room here now for negotiation. I got the distinct impression with talking with Mauro Sekulic and with Simon Coveney today, they're open to suggestions of negotiation. Let me also say something. When we talk about not having a prosperous part of the UK in the north of Ireland, it was the violence that took place there for 30 years that kept international investment away. And that Good Friday Agreement has opened up all kinds of possibilities for international investment. The people are well educated, they have a decent lifestyle, but they also are much dependent upon government instead of private investment. And I think that the Good Friday Agreement brought about a considerable de-escalation of many of the age-old arguments that people had that would have created a better atmosphere for international investment.
Okay.
And let me just go back to something that you
briefly
raised in your question, and that is John Major's comments at that time. I can't tell you how important they were when he talked about no long-term strategic or selfish interest for the UK and the north of Ireland, getting on with the enforcement of the Good Friday Agreement, living with the enforcement of the Good Friday Agreement, and not suddenly offering unilateral actions, but instead predictable positions, carefully negotiated to get through a tenuous period of time.
Yeah.
Make good sense.
Okay, Richard Neal, Sammy Wilson and Neal Richmond, thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you all.